discouragement, and I felt it was a good thing to go into right now during this time. So what he did was he took us into Nehemiah 4. And if you know Nehemiah 3 at all, it was very discouraging to them because the Babylonians had destroyed the holy city of Jerusalem. And God's children became frightened, confused, and discouraged and scattered across the nation. Hope arose when Cyrus the Persian came to power. He allowed the Israelites to begin rebuilding. So a priest named Ezra and an administrator named Nehemiah have a lesson for us about hope and how it can rise from the ashes and rubble of discouragement. So if we begin reading Nehemiah 4, 1 through 6, if everyone has their Bible, I didn't put it up because I didn't know how to do that.
That's fine. So Nehemiah 4.
And I'm getting mine up right now on my phone, so it'll take me just a minute. So, what I would like to do is whoever has the first couple of verses, I'd like them to read it for us. I don't want to do all the reading. So who would like to read the first 2 verses?
Oh, I can read it.
Okay, thank you, Patsy.
Oops, what did I do? Okay. But it's, well, I have King James, if that's okay.
That's okay, that's fine.
But it so happened, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these names correctly or not, but it so happened when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, that he was furious and very indignant and mocked the Jews. And when he spoke before his brethren and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they complete it in a day? Will they revive the stones from the heaps of rubbish, stones that are burned?" Now, Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, "Whatever they build, if even a fox goes up it, it will break down their stone wall. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn their reproach on their own heads and give them as plunder to a land of captivity. Do not cover their dignity, and do not let their sin be blotted out from before you, for they have provoked you to anger before the builders." So we built the wall, and the entire wall was joined together up to half its height, for the people had a mind to work.
That's very good, thank you. So my first question is, what opposition did Nehemiah's followers face? What was the biggest opposition? What were they up against?
They were they rebuilding the temple, right? Is that what's going on?
Yes, they were.
Was the wall first.
It was the wall. So basically, it seems like they were mad for because of the fact that they're rebuilding.
Right.
Was
So
probably a power struggle. They want the local people didn't want these interlopers coming in and ruining their game.
It
was pretty trashed. I mean, there wasn't really any much to speak of that they had to work with, was there?
No.
Well,
No,
they
no.
describe it as like a rubble, like, you know, you're right. I think it looks like it was trashed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It sounds like it was pretty frightening because there were so many against Nehemiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, Sanballat, Tobiah, and there seemed to, I think there was another group. Jim, do you know what that was?
Ashdodites.
Oh, yes, that's right. So they were all plotting together to kill them. And that's why they were a little frightened, I guess. So what was the first thing Nehemiah did, though? Back, if we can remember, I think it was verse 5.
Well, he offered a prayer.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, prayer.
There was a note here that said, sometimes we try to do everything we can, and then we decide maybe I should pray. Like Nehemiah had that down pretty good. He prayed first.
But it's interesting that the way he phrased his prayer, that it was more an affront to God than it is really to them. Because he said that for they have provoked you to anger. So he's framing their opposition to them as really their opposition to God.
Well, he said that he asked God to turn their insults, which were directed at them, back on their own heads, because they were suggesting that they couldn't build anything worthy of even a fox walking on. Okay, so let's see. We had a few other questions. One of the things that was asked is, have you ever felt your goals were unattainable? I suspect they did at that point. I think many of us have felt that our goals were unattainable. And I suppose if we had like 6 or so groups coming after us, plotting to kill us, we might feel that way.
Just a little.
Well, they were probably discouraged, feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Wondering if they could even do it. I mean, like if they built it, if it's just going to be destroyed again. And were they even going to get the materials from?
Possibly.
Yeah.
So can you think of anybody that you've really thought you'd like to do and things kept coming against you and discouraged you? If you've lived very long, you probably have.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Yeah, I know you've had lots of discouraging things happen to you. Does anybody want to share anything? So just think about things that may have happened to you, and if trying to attain your goals has led to discouragement or burnout for you. We'll think about that as we go along. So let's read verse 7 through 14. Anybody want to volunteer?
Okay, I will.
Oh, thank you.
7 through 14, you said?
Yes, please.
Okay. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much trouble that we cannot rebuild the wall. Also, our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put an end to the work. Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Therefore, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your homes.
Hmm.
Okay, good. Anybody have any thoughts about that they want to share right now?
Well, for me, a couple of things I just kind of leap out. One is they resorted to prayer, right off the bat, and that's on verse 8. And we prayed to our God, and set a guard as a protection against them day and night. And then the other thing that comes that I notice is that even though they prayed to God and entrusted their protection to Him, they still did everything that they could
Right.
to protect themselves. So it's not like like I'm praying to God and that's all that I'm going to do, but they actually it looked like they did everything that they could to
Yeah, they took
Mhm.
preparation.
to do everything they can to protect their families.
Mhm. Well, it mentioned that that the workers were becoming frustrated and afraid, and Nehemiah had to keep reminding them about their goals and to help them to think about the big picture, not to see the little dangers that were in front of them. So we talked about the ways. I think when I first sent out the information, I posted something. One was recognizing discouragement. And the first thing about that was fatigue. When you're fatigued, you tend to become angry and irritable and want to give up, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sure they were very tired because they worked really hard and long hours.
Uh-huh. But
Hi,
that
Judy.
fatigue doesn't always have to be physical. It's also the mental and the emotional worry and frustration and fear and everything all along with it.
That's
Mhm.
so true.
Well, it helps to have a very strong leader. This Nehemiah reminds me of Winston Churchill.
Ah,
Ah, maybe Winston Churchill was modeling himself after Nehemiah.
Mm.
He
hmm.
came later.
It's hard being, I mean, Nehemiah was a leader, but it's hard when a lot of people, it seems like around him, were saying, we can't do this, the enemy is more powerful. I mean, everything that could be wrong was emphasized, and it's almost like the people were defeated even before they did anything to get
Right.
going.
Yeah.
And that would be
Reminds
hard.
A
me
lot
of,
of, go
no,
ahead, Chris.
no, it just all of a sudden I remembered I reminded myself of the story way back with when they sent the spies into, to check out and see, and they came back with all these wild tales of giants and we can't do this and we can't do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, we can sure scare ourselves out of,
Yes,
can't we, by the way we think about things. I think all of
yeah.
us have, though. Okay, so Dee mentioned that they continued to do what God gave them to do. So when I said concentrate on the big picture, that's what they were doing. They were continuing, even though they were frightened and fatigued and discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing in that whole section of recognizing discouragement is to claim the encouragement of God's promises. So if we know what those are, and we remind ourselves and each other when we start to become discouraged, that's very helpful.
And that's what Nehemiah did for them too. He reminded them and he encouraged them.
Right. He was a good leader, as Jim said.
Right.
Mm.
Almost like makes me wonder if he was the only one that had that big picture in mind. Sherry. It's like it seems to me when I think was it verse 14 that when he addressed the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people. So to me, that's like everybody. So from the officials all the way to the common folk, um, it's almost like everyone else was discouraged
Yeah, it
except for
sounds like it.
Nehemiah, or at least maybe Nehemiah was also discouraged, but at least I mean, he looked to God to give him that courage.
Well, God had given him the challenge to do this, and so he knew that for sure. And one of my questions is, how do we know that we're called by God to do something? Because that was a very difficult thing to do. If he hadn't known for sure he was called by God, would he have become discouraged?
Mm.
Anybody have any ideas?
I almost want to I really think that all of us being followers of Christ, um, in a general sense, are called to to be
Mhm.
an impact to others, or be a positive model to each other's or each other. So in that sense, I think maybe a better thinking would be that every one of us are called for a greater purpose, and you don't have to worry or wonder whether or not you are called. But at the same time, I think maybe Sherry, part of the question that you're asking would be like for a specific thing.
Right.
Did God call you for that specific thing?
Yeah.
Which is,
Does anybody know enough about the history of this book to know whether God actually spoke to Nehemiah like he did to Moses? I can't remember the first 3 chapters of this
yeah.
book.
But Nehemiah was a prophet, so
Yeah.
at the least he was called to be a prophet.
Yeah, there were at least 3 other prophets addressing the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
And what were those? Jim, do you remember who were those?
Gonna put me on the spot.
Were they at the first 3 chapters? Was that?
No, it's some of the minor prophets.
Oh,
Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos.
At the same time, Jim, there's other prophets at
Yeah.
that time that were concurrent to Nehemiah, right?
Right.
I think I remember.
well, then that's confirmation to what he thought. I've heard that if you feel you get a word from the Lord, it's good to have confirmation from someone else. The Lord said the same thing to them.
Mhm. Well, Paul wrote to Philippians that he who began the good work will be faithful to complete it.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's for sure.
from a general standpoint, though, I think Sherry, like encouraging other people is always a good thing. So in that sense, we are called to be encouraging other people.
Right.
Praying for other people is also kind of a general thing. So we are also in a great sense called to pray for other people.
Okay. And help other people to get through whatever burdens they're going through. And so that's the next part of this as we read verses 16 through 23. Keep in mind the fifth response to discouragement, which is to carry someone else's burden. So, Jim, would you mind reading verse 16 through 23?
Okay. From that day on, half my men did work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armor. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were building on the wall. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other. Each one of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked, by the man who sounded the trumpet stayed with me. Then I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, work is extensive and spread out, and we are widely separated from each other along the wall. Whenever you hear the sound of the trumpet, join us. Our God will fight for us. So we continued the work with half the men holding spears in the first light of dawn until the stars came out. At that time, I said to the people, have every man and his helper stay inside Jerusalem at night so they can serve us as guards by night and workers by day. Neither I nor my brothers nor my men nor the guards who with me took off our clothes. Each had his weapon even when we went for water.
Wow. So anything jump out to anybody there about helping each other out? Or working in a group to complete a task rather than individually off in the corner somewhere?
Well, it's difficult to get your work done when you got two other things to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm. He was a good organizer, wasn't he?
What's a good organizer? Yeah.
He could see what needed to be done for sure.
Well, it sounds like the people were all cooperative too and following what they were told to do.
Mhm.
Why did they have to take off their clothes?
No, they did not take the clothes.
No, it says they didn't take their clothes off at all.
Clothes.
I think maybe for protection.
Yeah, probably meaning, I wonder if that meant they didn't sleep, like,
Off our clothes.
They were ready.
yeah, they were ready to go.
Why?
Yeah.
Washing.
Yeah, I guess that does mean that they were just always at the ready.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it seems like.
Mhm.
But
I
how
was
were
wondering
they able
about
to
that too, why they mentioned that, but I guess that's why.
So the picture I have in my head is that half of them held the spears. Are they saying that on one hand they're holding this a sword, and then on the other
I
hand,
know you're working with one hand.
is that what they're saying? That
In one part of the verse it said that, and then
how
later,
could they work like that? And each of the builders had his sword strapped at his side. Oh, so they actually were, while they were working, they had their weapons on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
it
That
said
was in verses 17 and 18.
that
Some carried
those who carried
shield and held a weapon in the other hand.
And so that would be hard. Each labor.
that's like carrying your GoPro and trying to swim.
And ambidextrous there.
I don't know if that is, I don't know how effective that is, but if you.
It says in verse 15, half the servants worked at construction, while the other half held the spears, the shields, the bows, and wore armor.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Well,
they
it
must,
sounds like, yeah, go ahead.
some did and some didn't.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. And that's in verse 16.
Mhm.
So what point do you think they were trying to make though?
They were busy.
They were busy, but they were ready in case somebody came upon them.
Yeah.
They were gonna whack them with the sword.
But it's interesting to see that the leaders were like the kind of like the next level right behind them.
Isn't that the way it always is? They let the poor peons go out in front and get shot first.
No, but maybe there's something else
Well,
behind
verse
Like-
19 says that they were far apart from each other.
Yeah.
Although, so
Distancing.
it sounds like maybe they couldn't even see each other. I'm not sure.
That's what it
Um,
sounded like.
And if that's the case, they would have to be, vigilant, and trustworthy.
Hear the sound of the trumpet and join us there. So they were separated.
They were separated somehow.
Well, maybe the wall was really long and they couldn't, from one end to the other, couldn't hear or see what the others were doing.
They were separated on the wall, yeah, far from one
Mhm.
another. So they had to sound a trumpet in order for them to sort of gather back together.
Okay, so Nehemiah saw that this needed to be changed. So he brought everybody closer together in support. And I don't know if it was all at once or if it was at the sound of the trumpet, they all came and got refueled on information about what to do or how that worked. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I don't know. It could be, it could go one way or the other. Yeah.
Well, it's just like in any situation where you have a bunch of people and you have to give them instruction, there has to be some point where everybody comes together
Mhm.
and whoever's in charge has to give information. So that may be.
Yeah, but then the last sentence is saying, "Our God will fight for us." It's almost like to me what is being said is that the trumpet was like their call to arms, and because there's a recognition that they're all separated because of the great work that they're doing. But then when somebody sees the enemy approaching, they sound the trumpet. They all gather together to show force at that time, and then it sort of like when they see people a show of force, then the enemy kind of thinks twice about attacking. Anyway, that's sort of what I envision, and that's why he said our God will fight for us. So I think the idea being that the show of force will cause the enemies to fear them and then back off, and then like maybe the idea being that um, God would be their strength at that time, and enough of their presence could deter the enemies from attacking them.
Mhm. Well, my understanding is Jerusalem was built on a hill, so it was easier to defend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my
In the-
question, what if they were attacked on more than one side? If everyone all gathered to where the trumpet was, what if they were attacked from where they came from?
That's a thought too.
Hmm.
Well, he must have known how it was set up.
I don't know how anyone would know before they were attacked. Thus they had to trust God to protect them and fight
They
for them.
They probably had watchmen too.
They did. That.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure that
probably.
And in the next chapter, they're talking about that's not the only thing that was going on. They were in a position of famine, and they were grumbling because they'd mortgaged their lands and they didn't have very much. And here's all these refugees coming in that they're supposed to support.
Mm.
Well, back to what we just read, it just occurred to me that we're always stronger when we're connected to our brethren and to people that we're working with. So I just wondered how you guys think that we could implement what they were doing into our own lives to help us with our discouragement.
Mm. I
How
think
do we help each other, or how could we help each other with discouragement?
the part of the answer would be, recognizing, like being transparent of your own discouragement and letting other people be aware of it, so that we can come together for the other person.
I think praying for one another too.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
trusting God to get us through it.
Yes.
Our trumpets are text and email and phone.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of like our weapons, right? That would be the sword, because they had to be armed somehow, right? They were told to arm themselves.
Hmm.
So part of that gives them a sense also of security, I would think.
Well, we're armed too, aren't we? What are we armed with?
Mm.
Armor of God.
That's right. So one of the things that I was reading here that you might be interesting is it says we either live out, wear out, or burn out in our lives. Every human body has its limits of time, pressure, and exertion. And this could apply to them and to us now. When these limits are reached, we can become irritable, tense, and discouraged. This is when the enemy strikes.
Mhm.
And I think that's what the enemies there were counting on, that they would become exhausted and discouraged and fearful. And then they would strike in the night when nobody knew they were coming.
Mhm.
And I see how Satan works that way too in our lives. If we allow ourselves to get too tired, don't ask for help when we need it, just do too much. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is being united, having united, or having unity, because it looks to me that they one of the thing that strengthened them was the fact that they were united in purpose. So
Right.
they may be fearful about a lot of things, but at least they were, I think, united in as a people, and and are willing to take up their sword. Basically, they're willing to battle for one another.
Well, that was mentioned too. They had the same goals, and he was trying to get them to focus on the purpose and to trust God to get them through,
Mhm.
and to keep going when they felt discouraged and tired and all.
Mhm. So that may be part of
Yes.
the answer is when you get discouraged. Well, when the person gets discouraged, let other people know, and let's carry each other's burden when other people are discouraged.
Yeah.
And um, and then the other part of it would be to, like you said, to go forward, to do something about it. I mean, they certainly prayed, but they prayed and then they also did something about it. So it's not one or the other. It's really both. And I think I always
Well,
thought
it's
of
kind
it.
of like, it reminds me of just like with the pandemic. Some people will say, well, if God wants me to go out this way, then I'm just going to go out. I mean, rather than doing safety precautions or things that you
Right.
can do to
Right.
be to help guard yourself, some people just say, well, if it's God's will, I'm going to go, you know?
Like fatal.
Yeah, fatalistic. This is and instituting safeguards that are also keeping you safe.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I have a pretty simplistic way of looking at it, and it's just, you know, God gave us a brain and he expects us to use it. So,
I agree with that.
well, you know, I mean, we
Yeah, but
count on him, but we do as much as we can do to protect ourselves.
Right.
But in addition to what Judy said, yeah, we have but we also have two hands.
Mhm.
So it doesn't mean that we, one, not use our brain, and then two, not use our hands
Mhm.
and our feet for that matter, so that it shows that we can do, or we need to be able to do our part physically as well, as well as mentally, of course, but it takes all of us, all of who we are, and not just say, well, or be fatalistic about it,
Mhm.
or not, or be frozen. I think that's a lot of times what happens, and I know I can relate to that when you are discouraged, a lot of times it causes us to freeze. What is the
Yeah.
word for that? I'm thinking about
Overwhelmed.
There's a movie called Frozen, isn't there?
it.
Oh, yeah, but that's different.
Well, there is, but it's a little different. Fight or flight.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't it true that when we are discouraged, a lot of times we are immobilized,
Oh, yeah.
like we don't want to do
Well,
anything.
why
You
are
have
we
to
immobilized?
force yourself to do the things that you know will help lift your spirits and get you on going again.
Right. But that's probably because of fear or what?
They're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
where you
think-
don't know where to
yeah.
start.
Fear that causes that.
Yes. Overwhelmed is a good one.
Very good.
Well, yeah, I mean, our whole reading tonight, they started out by saying, we can't do it. We can't do this. Our enemies are better than us. We're going to get killed. So everything that can go wrong was mentioned, and enough for people to get paralyzed by fear. And yet somehow Nehemiah, being a good leader, reminded them of God's presence, and started assigning them responsibilities, and that sort of kept them going, or helped in pulling them out of discouragement.
Mhm.
So we talked about maybe asking for help if you need it. How do we know when it's time to quit being independent and just seek out some help so we don't burn out on what we're trying to do?
When we get stuck,
Mhm.
And when we're stuck, what feelings and emotions do we usually have so we know we're stuck?
nothing is moving. I had a friend once, it seems to me that's my growth pattern. I go from stuck place to stuck place to stuck place. And this friend told me, just do something, just do anything that's different
Little
than
thing.
doing now.
Uh-huh.
It's true.
It's a good
Yeah.
buy.
And so do you think that it would help you if you ask for help with that stuckness? Or do you try to figure it out yourself?
I just call somebody and talk it out with them until I get somebody who's not involved in it and doesn't have the emotional baggage with what I'm going through.
That's good.
I think sometimes people might be hesitant to ask for help because there's shame involved. Like, I got myself into this mess.
Oh, yeah.
Or
Or
I've got-
embarrassment.
Or embarrassment. So, oh my gosh, I'm just going to stay stuck and I've got to just figure this out myself. Where sometimes you just, we have to put that pride aside and trust our friends.
That's the big word I was thinking of, pride, because we all want to appear to have it together, or
Yes.
least not be too stupid, you know.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
Well, you have to be self-aware of what your situation is. I can be really stubborn and just keep trying no matter what. And really, if I ask for help or talk to somebody or sit down and have a tall, cool one, I'd figure it out.
Yeah.
Alcohol does it every time, right, Jim?
Can't hurt.
Name's on the bottle, right?
Mm.
I've heard Jim say so many times that he will go for a walk or take a shower or go to sleep, and pretty soon the answer comes.
Yeah, I think sometimes changing your surroundings,
Yeah.
getting yourself out of whatever it is that's bogging down your brain, it helps you refocus and see things in a different light.
True.
I agree.
Yeah, my husband did that all the time. He'd sleep on it and then boom.
Yeah.
The answer comes later, the next morning.
Well, that's another thing that comes to mind of, you know, when you're having troubles and it's evening. And sometimes people just feel like, oh, I've got to work this out. I've got to work this out tonight. Well, you know, if you just go to bed, wake up in the morning, things look differently then.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I've heard that there are very few things that are so important that we have to do them immediately.
Mm,
You
I
know,
would agree with that.
sometimes if we get ourselves in a corner where we've waited too long to do something, that's kind of stressful. But most of the time, if we start ahead of time or ask for help when we need it, we can avoid the stress.
Hmm.
I will share something else that I think is a little on this same line. When my son died, I felt like we were saying before, that God will look after me. I don't need help from the outside. God will take care of me. And so I was trying to allow that to lift my spirit, so to speak. And you know, it just wasn't happening. and finally, I did reach out to the community that helps with survivors and so on. And they didn't necessarily have the answer for me, but it got my feet moving in the direction that I needed to go. And so I learned that, well, I felt like I learned that God doesn't intend most of the time probably for us to just sit still and wait for him to fix everything. He means for us to go and do our part.
And part of him fixing it is finding those relationships.
Right. That will help. Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody that can talk us down.
Right.
Well, maybe that's what we're here for, is to be a light for other people sometimes. Maybe that's part of our purpose for being here.
And to be able to listen to them when they need to talk to somebody, you know, just not maybe feel like we've got to come up with the answers necessarily, but just allow them to be able to blow off some steam or share with someone else, and we're it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a pressure cooker. Let the pressure go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and I think the main thing too is that in the reading that we have, one phrase that kind of leaps out on the page is that our God will fight for us. So to me, that says God will basically be undergirding everything that we're doing, and He would supply the difference, you know, whatever it is. If you need courage, you know, if you're lacking courage, God will be the one who would give you the courage and the strength. If you're immobilized, God will be right there to kind of push you on and help you get unstuck.
Yeah.
Well, asking for help is a number one life lesson in the first place.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. No, recognizing you need help, right? Number one.
That's probably the first thing.
After you recognize that you need help, then you ask for help.
But you can see the strength of community in Nehemiah's story.
Oh,
If they'd had just a few people who were willing to do anything and they all wanted to do it differently or wouldn't come together with a common goal, it would never have gotten done.
Mhm.
you know what? It just made me think of this pandemic thing that we're dealing with, where there are people who just want to go and do their own thing and not follow the directives from the medical community and so on. And so here we are living with it probably longer than we would have to.
We're stupid.
What did you, honey?
I missed that.
He goes,
I
because
keep-
we're stupid.
Oh, sorry about that.
I don't
I
know.
feel like if the medical community, let's use the mask for an example.
Yeah.
If the medical community is saying that they believe that having your nose and your mouth covered is going to help not spread this problem, then even if it turns out they were wrong, I don't see a reason to go against that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
But what-
nobody else has any other ideas.
Well, plus they have the most science to back it up.
Yeah.
Well, and
I
it seems to make sense to me. I mean, if you're not spewing germs all over, they're not going to get on anybody.
One would think that that would make a difference. And I see more people pulling them down so their nose is exposed,
I know.
but their mouth is covered, like that's going to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
Or like the one that was wearing a mask, but then they put a big hole in the middle.
Ah, oh boy,
And the woman wasn't joking. I mean, it was just like,
really?
yeah, they wanted.
Well,
No, but discouragement. I'm glad we're looking at this particular scripture because it really is helpful to see how we can help ourselves.
I think one of the challenges too is that it's hard to wait until you're stuck and then reach out if you haven't built those
the community already.
consistently. So
Yeah,
you know, I'm not, even though we have Bible study in church, I'm not sure I'm going to reach out. You know what I mean? You have to have a consistent relationship with someone
yes,
when
to
you're
feel
not,
close enough to share.
and
Yeah.
even not stuck. So it's fostering those kind of relationships.
Yeah.
So that if you are stuck, it's less of a big deal to ask for help.
I was going to mention that and I forgot. I think we have to be careful who we share personal things with
Yes,
because not everyone is capable of understanding without judging.
mhm,
You know, so we have to just, like Lisa said, we have to find people that we can really click with, that we can trust before we
Yeah.
share certain things.
I think that's a really good point, Sherry.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And just because we're Christians
Yeah.
doesn't mean we're on the same same wavelength as every other Christian, or that they're on the same wavelength as we are.
Yeah,
Maybe they haven't figured out how to nurture or give counsel without judging at this point. You know, we just don't know.
mhm,
They might need it more for themselves than they're able to give to you.
Yeah, that's true. And everybody's got different backgrounds. I mean, if people
Right.
have been abused and you start talking about abuse to them, they may just not be able to tolerate it. You know, we have to think of them too.
right. Experiences that make us who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the major thing we need to do if we become discouraged now as a group here? Do we feel we can maybe call someone in this group and talk with them? Or, I mean, think about that, because I think we're all in agreement that sometimes we need support and help, not just with physical things, but with mental or emotional problems. Like someone just said, we probably won't have the answer, but we can listen.
Yeah.
Well, I've done it before, but that was after church when we're all sitting down and having nauseous.
Yeah.
Nauseous.
Then I have several people there to run it by.
Mm.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard when you can't.
I have to look elsewhere now.
Yes.
Well, not that I didn't use both, but
Yeah.
We tend to be, I think, and we're getting a lot better having, after saying this, but I noticed that as far as a community, we tend to be a little bit gun shy
Oh, I think so, yeah.
when it comes to being more, just open and transparent about things that we're dealing with.
Mhm.
And so part of it, I don't know, I'm sure there's a lot of factors, but part of it is pride. You like I think Sherry mentioned earlier, we want to appear that we can handle it and we're together. It's like I don't have any problems. Don't bother me.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think it's important to identify the person who's gonna be a good match for us to share with.
Right.
And like Sherry said, not just assume because they're Christians, that it's all gonna work out good.
So
Well,
there's going to be time and interacting with one another and everything before something might click.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
I think
Dee, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As a pastor and then elders and wives, and do you ever feel that there's a responsibility to not burden people with your problems because they're the ones that you're supposed to be helping or whatever?
Yeah,
I
good
think
question.
that plays more for me, more that whole to me what I'm more battling with is the pride issue,
Mhm.
just
Because I will say, oh, we should ask for prayer. And sometimes you'll be like, no, no, no.
yeah.
We got the pipeline to God,
And I don't say we've got the
No,
pipeline.
I know. But I mean, that's how I phrase it sometimes. But yeah, I think
Yeah, I think
That's
that's a good question, Sherry, and I think it's uh, for me it's that would be it, just a kind of a sense of pride, but at the
Well,
same time, I
would that be because the trust isn't there though? And is there a reason why the trust isn't there, that people wouldn't, understand, or that they might think less of us or something like that?
when all you have with people is chit chat and surface conversation, it's hard to open up and say what you
Things
really
are in your heart. Yeah.
feel. I just get
I'm
up
not-
to hear that.
I'm not sure that church is the place where we can get deep, but we can make the relationships there and maybe take it further with the relationships outside of church sometimes. If you find someone you feel comfortable sharing with.
I think it's always hard for a pastor because you need somebody on your same level, if I may use that word. Somebody who understands your role and the issues that you might be going through, because they also perhaps have gone through some of those or helped somebody along. So it isn't like a pastor can share with lay people necessarily
well,
problems.
the good thing about our denomination is that I think as a denomination, um,
In the
we,
past.
we are more like together because
Yeah.
we've always had that culture that we are scattered and we have many different churches at different, in different countries. But then we come together. We used to have festivals together. So there is that kind of connection that has been built in place over the decades. And then what I value for our denomination and many even in our region is that our region here have a good group of pastors that do get together, I mean, either now virtually or physically, where we can gather together and get that kind of emotional support, just sharing or unburdening of problems, and prayers, coming together as a group in prayer. And we I think overall we have that for the pastors. Um, I think as well for our elders. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's always a work in progress for all of us, and that's why I say part of it too. So it's a double-edged sword, because at one end we're there, but on the other end, I also sense that because of our cultural background as a church, we tend to be, um, in the main, just gun shy, and like what Mary Kay said, sort of like we don't go deeper. Well, it's not that we can't. I think we can, but there's certain things culturally that's holding us sort of back.
Yeah.
But when you see somebody for 1 hour every week and you're not engaged in conversation for that hour, it's you're not really building a very strong connection, I would say.
And group
Even
size.
though it's been 40 or 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I remember hearing in the old church how the wives of ministers and pastors were they were kind of secluded. They
They definitely were.
they were
Yeah.
just with themselves. And, if you don't get along with that woman, then where do you go? Because everybody outside the church was bad.
Yeah. Well, that really, they weren't allowed to have friendships with the rest of the women,
Yeah.
because it would look like there was favoritism going on.
Well, I think here's the cultural problem we've had over the years. What we've been told is that we are supposed to get our act together. So, and if you do not have your act together, there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
So
Spiritually,
when you have that drilled to your people for so long, that it's all about following God, and if you're missing the mark, there must be something horribly wrong with you, or you must not be doing something right.
Exactly.
We were, in the general, so kind of embarrassed by showing that we don't have it together.
oh boy.
I don't even pretend to have it together.
I know, but see,
Well, but you don't have that baggage that the rest of us have.
and that has been honed
Lucky you.
for decades, that
Mhm.
it's all about this and boom, boom, boom. You got to do
Yeah.
all these things, and we were told that the reason why Jesus is not returned is because of us.
Yeah.
So
No.
you got all of these things that is sort of like,
Whoa.
yeah. We were actually told at one time the reason why Jesus Christ is not returning yet, is because we don't have our act together. So it's like, whoa.
Missed that one.
I know. So it's all about me. It's all about our own weaknesses. And instead of like acknowledging that we are indeed flawed and we are weak and we have problems and we have insecurities and fears and doubts and all that. We are told to be like, kind of pull yourself up and make yourself look nice and pretty.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So
I think a lot
Looking
of
good
churches
and
do
being
that
right.
to the pastors.
mhm,
That's what we learned. Look good and be right.
Oh,
mhm.
dear.
That's wrong. It's so wrong on many levels. Because
Right.
that's the reason why we need God, is because we don't look good and we don't act right.
Right. Well, this has been really interesting.
You guys, I keep missing out
Oh, sorry.
because I keep getting a little sign that says my internet connection is unstable and everybody's talking gets kind of blah, 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 and then
Sorry.
the faces freeze and
We're
it's always when something interesting is being discussed.
Oh, Judy, get your act together.
get right with it, girl.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it's 8 o'clock, so maybe we should. Sleep.
Good,
And,
good discussion, guys.
yeah.
Very good.
I
Mhm.
recorded it, so hopefully, and I'll market this to our members, so
What?
people.
You
Oh,
recorded
good.
it?
I'm
He's going to
recording.
market it and sell it.
Oh, boy. You should tell us that before we speak.
It would be good for others to, listen to our conversation.
Uh-huh.
Maybe they'll pick up something. I don't know.
And what others are we planning to share this with?
Oh, our
People in our church. People in the
church,
church.
Facebook, and
Oh,
no.
what?
you're joking, right?
No, I mean on our Facebook page.
Limited membership.
Hmm.
Oh, it's only to membership, right?
Yeah, so they'll know that we're flawed, imperfect, ugly, and
They already know that, don't they?
Yeah, they already know the worst about us. We just think we're fooling them.
Yeah.
Okay, so who wants to close in prayer?
Yeah,
I'm
just
scared.
I don't know if you guys, did you put it on Faith Life about Teresa Beree's death?
oh yeah, it did.
Okay,
What?
so Teresa Beree's father passed away.
Who's
No.
whose father?
Bart and Teresa.
Her
So-
father.
Yeah, he fell a couple weeks. He's had dementia, or has, yeah. And he fell a couple weeks ago and broke his hip and just went downhill. Like, could not recover. I texted her earlier today. She goes, "I'm just so surprised," because we knew he was getting weaker and the dementia was taking over. But she goes, "He broke his hip and 2 weeks later he's gone. He just couldn't recover." They took him to hospice last night and he passed away at 2 a.m.
Wow.
Just super. She's just thankful he's not going to have to deal with the pain and all of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but so that was pretty quick. So we just need to remember them in prayer.
Yes.
Who was this?
Teresa and Bart Bree. Bart's the one that married us, and Teresa, his wife. It's her father who passed away.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Good to hear you guys, Starkeys.
Yeah, what we have, 9 tonight?
10.
10?
Where are they?
Okay.
Well, Judy, you just can't see, but we're all here.
So I only see 8.
It's okay.
Well,
Well,
you
that
got the
was-
Starkeys, that's two.
The
8
Starkeys are
counting the Starkeys is what I see.
So it's Sherry, Jim, Dee and I, Chris, Patsy, you, Mary Kay, and the Starkeys. That's all.
Oh, okay. You're counting each couple as 2.
Yes, each of us is a person.
Well, I mean, each one of us is here.
All right.
I almost took a bubble bath instead, but I'm here. So I
Ah,
count.
okay.
I'm sure there's a background for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, shall we end in prayer now? Father, we just thank you so much for your inspiration tonight as we realize how imperfect human nature is and how wonderful you are to be here with us and give us the help we need when we need it. We thank you that you've given us each other to be able to support and encourage each other. We thank you for our wonderful pastor and wife who are always there for us and who encourage us and who are so real as people.
Mhm.
And we just thank you that you never leave us nor forsake us. And you help us to get through very difficult things. And we know that you'll help us to get through this coronavirus in due time. We thank you for the wisdom that we are all using to take our responsibility for the way that we can keep from getting sick. And we just thank you, Jesus, for being our Savior and our Lord.
Mhm.
We just thank you in your name. Amen.
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 Hey
Amen.
guys, was Ray Meyer at church? Did we hear his voice Sunday at church?
You did.
Ray? Okay,
Yeah, it
yeah.
was good to have him there.
Yes, he was there.
He
Did,
wore
did
his
he wear
mask.
his mask?
He had to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good, good.
Uh,
We
most of the
wonder,
time.
Yeah,
Right.
Dee, I wonder, Dee, if you could just remind people to wear their masks up to here.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
we just
whole
need
time.
to remind people about it, especially
Because
because
they end up
we're
pulling it down and talking, and it's like, you gotta cover.
I know it.
Yeah.
especially in a confined room, we have to. I mean, I
Yeah.
would tell you this, that here in Mexico, the staff here, I mean, it's 90
Oh,
degrees out there
And they're
and
used to it and
stuffy.
humid, and they wear it
And they wear
all
it
the time.
all the time. And you never hear any one of them really complaining, oh, it's so hot, and,
Nope.
It's,
They're out there doing yard work, and I'm like
Oh, my.
sweating, just sticking.
They're wearing their mask when they're doing yard work.
They're
yeah,
not gringos like us, you know?
Yeah, they're
They're
used
used to it.
they're
Yeah.
on their own, and they are wearing their mask at
just
all
as an
times.
example,
It was like, whoa.
reminds me of
So I
how-
have to be like, okay, I'm not gonna complain when I get on the shuttle.
Yeah.
I know.
No, I'm gonna do it.
Mm.
So good deal.
So yeah, we thank you for letting, yeah,
So we'll
certainly
be
know
back
that.
Sunday. Thanks for, again, Jim and Sherry, especially for all your work with all the technology.
Yeah, it worked okay this weekend.
They did good.
Dee, that drink with the dry ice in it, please get the recipe and make it
No,
for us.
that was Cirque du Soleil. No, that was on
Oh,
Cirque du Soleil.
yeah.
That was their special meal that went along with the theme of the show, Hoya.
Yeah.
What was the drink?
Her grandfather was a scientist, and so everything in our dinner,
Was
like we
edible.
ate like an edible flower with seeds.
Oh.
It was amazing. It was
It
so
was just
good.
creative. I mean, even our menu was edible.
Yeah. Dee like pushed it and it
I-
cracked. He goes,
I-
"Oh, I broke the menu." He
I
goes,
said,
"No,
I broke
sir.
your menu.
That's an edible wafer that you're going to dip in because it had the edible food ink
Oh,
printed.
how
It was
cool.
amazing. Yeah.
That is
We don't
so
know the
cool.
recipe, Mary Kay. It's just a lot of dry ice going on.
Okay, I just want to share one more thing. This is a kind of a happy thing, I think, encouraging thing. I think I put on the Faith Life that my niece was allowed to go back to work. Today was her first day back. And she had said to me yesterday, she was having a little anxiety about arriving in downtown Portland in the early hours because of what's been going on and how they're attacking the police department and so on. And she said, so this morning there was a church group there handing out little thank you bags to all the employees who were going in. I thought that was really nice.
Who
Where
does
did
she
you
work
work?
for, Judy?
Huh? What was that?
Who does she work for?
She works for the police department, Portland
Oh, I
Police.
didn't realize that. Oh, that's neat.
She is a trainer for records keeping something or other.
Well,
Nice.
that's really neat that they were
That.
doing that.
Yeah, I thought that was a really nice thing to hear after all the negative stuff that you hear about what's going on with
Yeah.
Well, and you
the
heard about that little,
protesters.
you heard about that little 7-year-old boy that was going up and taking the policeman's hands and praying for him. Did you
Really?
hear about that? Yeah.
In
It was
Portland,
on
Oregon?
Facebook. Yep, it was on Facebook.
Huh.
Sweet.
It was really cool to see.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
we
neat.
can't demonize police.
Oh, of course
yeah.
not. No.
I think it's so hard for that community. I'm not saying that they're perfect, understand they're human and also they have been taught to do things a certain way over the years, but
Yeah.
they need to hear from us people that we do appreciate them because
Yeah.
all this negative stuff is really wearing.
Sure
Right.
did.
Very hard.
Discouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
They just need to stop killing black people. That's all.
But it's not just.
I'm just
And-
teasing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Honey.
I'm just teasing. Dumb.
I know. I try to not go there.
What? Good job, Sherry.
Yeah, very good, Sherry.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sherry.
So you can do it next week too, right?
Oh, no.
Judy, you're ready to lead next week, right? You're up.
Are you gonna lead Judy?
Huh? No. I thought,
Next week.
no, I might be out of town.
I'm sure she will now.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everyone.
All right, good night.
Bye.
You guys
Safe
send it-
travels home.
Everyone be safe and well. Love you. Night.
Love you too.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.